Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, Jeremy, as always, trying to make this world seem a little more normal. Does it ever happen? Nah, not really. Not really. But we try still, we prevail. And as always, I bring a guest with me to help me on this crazy quest because, craziness loves company. And my guest tonight is Joseph Holmes, podcaster from I want to. Ah, I just had it from the Overthinkers podcast, and he is also a speaker to angels, which we're going to dive into that a lot more in a bit. But first things first, how you doing tonight, Joseph?
Hi, Jeremy. Nice to be here.
Glad to have you here. Doing good tonight. All right. Well, Joseph, let's start this off with the same question I asked all 200 something guests I've been on the show. What got you into the paranormal?
Well, I really didn't have any choice. When I was 7 years old, uh, I grew up in National City, San Diego, and every summer we would drive to Arizona to visit my grandparents. And when I was 7 years old, on this particular trip, we were driving back home, and whenever we drove back home, we always stopped at some side places on the way. And my parents wanted to stop in Nogales, Arizona. And for a 7-year-old kid, Nogales was cool because right across the border is Nogales, Mexico, same name. So anyway, we came in late that night. So we just all, my two brothers, me and my parents went to bed. And in the morning, everybody except me was up out of bed, ready to go to breakfast. And I was lying on my back. And this wave, at the time, what I called it was a wave of peace, entered my head, went down my body and up my toes. And I didn't know what it was. I mean, I was 7 years old. It never happened to me before, but it felt good, so I wasn't afraid. And so I got up, got ready to go to breakfast. I didn't mention it to anyone. And while we were waiting at the stoplight to cross the street, it happened again to me. And I never knew what it was. It just felt really good. But a couple of years ago, every morning I get up since 2012, I get up anywhere between 2 and 4 a.m. And I transcribe what I call Love Notes for Your Soul. These are 4 stanza poems from Mary Magdalena. And when this began happening in 2012, I started having doubts, right? So the poems started coming in December 2012. So in April, I started having some serious doubts about these. Are they really coming from Mary Magdalene? So I'll tell you the major event that really solidified my belief in this occurred a few months later. But in April, I gave her an ultimatum. I said, look, I want proof. I want proof these are coming from you. And, a day went by and nothing happened. I mean, the poems kept coming, but she didn't answer my declaration. And 2 days went by, nothing. A week went by, nothing. A month went by, nothing. I kind of forgot about it. But again, every morning the love notes are coming to me. So that was in April. In July, she said, I want you to publish these. And I'm thinking, publish these? Well, I better get some people to read them and get some, testimonials on them. So I went to this website, and it has hundreds, if not thousands of people that just provide different services. So I figured I'd I'd find some people, pay them for their time to read the love notes, and if they wanted to, they could give me a testimonial. So I'm, I was going through everybody's bios, and it was taking so long. I thought, well, I'll just go through the pictures. And I started going through the pictures really fast, and I landed on this woman, and I looked down, and her name was Angelina, and she was a model, and she provided a certain service, but it wasn't, testimonials or anything. So I sent her an email anyway. And I didn't tell her anything. I just said, I have some poems. I'll pay you for your time to read them. If you want to give me a testimonial, fine. If not, that's fine. I'll pay you for your time. And she wrote back and she said, well, no, that's not what I do. so I said, okay. So I started going through the pictures again. And I called Mary Magdalene Maggie for short. And when these all started in December of 2012, I asked her, I said, look, I know Maggie's not a nickname from Magdalena, but would you mind if I called you Maggie? And she said, no, if I can call you Joseph. Joseph is my middle name. No one calls me Joseph until now. So I said, sure. So anyway, we were calling these love notes from Maggie at the time. And anyway, all I told Angelina was, I just have some poems. I like you to read them. And she wrote back and said, no, that's not what I do. So I started going through the pictures again. And Maggie said, no, you go back to her. So we went back and forth like 3 or 4 days. And finally, I think just out of exasperation, she said, fine, send me the poems. So when I sent her the poems, I had to explain, because we're calling them love notes from Maggie. And I had to explain to her that, these are coming from Mary Magdalene. And I call her Maggie. And so we're calling them love notes from Maggie. And the next day, I got an email from Angelina. And she says, Joseph, you're not going to believe this. And she said, everybody knows me as Angelina because that's what my mother wanted to call me. But when I was born, my father wanted to call me Mary Magdalena. And she said, and so on my birth certificate, my name is Mary Magdalena. And she sent me a copy of her passport to prove it. She said, and you're not going to believe this. She said, I grew up in Greece, and all my friends called me Mary. And one day, one of my very closest friends asked me if they could call me Maggie. And I said, so I wrote back to her and I said, wait a minute, is Maggie a common nickname for Magdalena? She said, no. But my friend wanted to call me Maggie. I loved it. So all my best friends called me Maggie. So of all the thousands of people I could have landed on that asked to read these poems, Angelina, real name Mary Magdalena, her nickname was Maggie. And when I read that, I again looked down at her name, Angelina, Angel. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this must be this is my burning bush for Mary Magdalene, answering my doubts, right? Well, what I want to express to your listeners is, when you start having these spiritual experiences, your monkey mind, your ego, is going to cause doubts. And you would think after that kind of experience, I wouldn't have ever had doubts again. But that's not how it works. Every so often, I still get a doubt, And this is where Nogales comes in. When I was a little boy in Nogales and had that spiritual experience. So about a year later, the doubt started creeping in again. And I didn't have to say anything. She just said, look up Carlos Castaneda. And I thought, Carlos Castaneda? I said, I know about Carlos. For your listeners who don't know, Carlos was an anthropology student at UCLA back in the 1960s. And he wrote a thesis called The Teachings of Don Juan. And it was a shaman in Arizona. And anyway, it became an international bestseller. He became world famous. So I knew a lot about him because that's when I was in college. And I said, well, I know about Carlos. She said, look up Carlos Castaneda. So I Googled Carlos, and I knew a lot about him. So I'm just, kind of going through it. And over in the sidebar, there's this story. It says, I can confirm Carlos Castaneda's meeting of Don Juan. And well, that was the big thing. Carlos's detractors said he made all this up. There's no Don Juan. It's a fictional character. And so here's a story about this guy who said he could confirm there's a real Don Juan. So I clicked on that and started reading it. And the story he's relating, he was in Mexico. He was traveling in Mexico. He was coming back to the border. He got sick, and he stayed in a little town on this side of Nogales until he recuperated. And he said that's important because if he had just crossed when he was sick, he would have missed that meeting with Carlos and Don Juan. Hi, honey. And so he crossed over after he recuperated, and he knew who Carlos was. They were friends. So he actually saw Don Juan and Carlos at the meeting. But the name of the town, Jeremy, the name of the town that he recuperated in, the suburb of Nogales, Arizona, or Nogales, Mexico, the name of the town is Magdalena. So Maggie was telling me that at the time, I called it a feeling of peace, but it was the grace of Mary Magdalene flowing through me.
Makes sense. And I'm going to say, I love this story because there's a lot of synchronicity in it and there's a lot of fate in it. And synchronicity and fate are two of my favorite topics in the world because everything's supposed to happen for a reason. And the synchronicities in your tale line up so perfectly that fate basically was planned out for you before any of this happened. And Mary Magdalene just led you down that road, basically. She was your guide. She was your GPS.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I want to emphasize to your listeners that, you're always going to have doubts. I to this day, I continue to have doubts, and she'll tell me to do something or whatever. So that's just the normal, when you start having these spiritual experiences, your ego gets on the defensive mode, and it starts ego. EGO. It's an acronym for edging God out, and it's your monkey mind, and your monkey mind will do everything to stay in control, and to have you think that what you see with your physical eyes is all there is. And when you start, Mary Magdalene, when she saw the resurrected Christ, she didn't see him with her physical eyes. She saw him with the eye of her heart, the single eye of her heart. And that's how I see her today. When I actually see her, I don't see her much anymore. She just relays the love notes to me every morning. But I've seen her a few times in physical form.
Oh, I'm sure in physical form she is breathtaking. I'm sure she is a sight it's a sight many people wish they could see. How many of us out there actually would want to see an angel of any type?
Yeah, the first time she actually came with Mother Mary. And I first saw Mother Mary. I took this breathwork workshop. It was lasted for a week, and it started on a Sunday. And on the Wednesday, the following Wednesday, we had the breathwork session late at night. And during the session, everybody's on their back. The lights are low. It's dark in the room. And when I opened my eyes and all I saw were these eyes above me. And I thought they were my mother's because she had passed away a couple years earlier, but I couldn't tell for sure. And so finally the facilitator said, okay, we're going to turn the lights on in 10 minutes. So start, transitioning back to, your consciousness. And when he said that, the eyes expanded, and it was Mother Mary. And she just beamed me with beams of gold and white light for the 10 minutes. Well, in 1990, that was 1993. So in 2001, I was teaching a class, and I swore off any breath work after that experience because actually what happened the next night, she took me into these, what I call the light regions. And I stayed in those light regions for 6 months. And I couldn't work. I mean, I explained it to a Catholic one time, and he said, "Oh, you were in a state of rapture." I said, "Okay, that sounds right, rapture." I'd walk into a supermarket, Jeremy, just walk in to buy something, and just out of the blue, I just start giggling and laughing. I had no control over it. I mean, I was just in the state of rapture for 6 months. And anyway, but then when I came out of that state, it's like hitting rock bottom. And so I said, I don't want to do that again, So I swore off breath work for all those years. And then in 2005, I think it was, I got a flyer saying I was going to have breath work at the Mission San Luis Rey, one of the California missions in Oceanside, California. And that mission is associated with Mother Mary. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Maybe I'll just take it. So maybe I'll see Mary again, And so I announced to my class that there wouldn't be any Saturday class. And I didn't tell them why. So everybody was gone except this one parent. I was locking up, and the parent came up to me, and she said, "Why are you taking the seminar?" And Jeremy, without thinking, out of my mouth came, "Oh, to meet Mary Magdalene." So I'm driving home, and I'm thinking, Mary Magdalene, I don't have any interest in her. Why did I say Mary Magdalene? I'm going to hopefully to see Mary again. So anyway, the next morning, they start the breath work. And I'm thinking, and we're doing it in the chairs, sitting up. And I'm thinking, no, this isn't going to work, because I'm thinking about when it happened before. I said, it has to be dark. We have to be on the floor. This isn't going to work. So anyway, I didn't want to interrupt the session. So I followed along with everyone. And in through the door, there's just a door with no doors, just a open door.
Doorway. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mary puts her head around the corner. And, it's real and it's not real. I mean, it's, they're physical, but they're not completely physical. So and time is different with them. So she like was up in my face, and with her was Mary Magdalene, and they were wearing these black capes, wearing these black capes. I didn't know why, but they were circling my head and giggling and wrapping the capes around me, just giggling and having fun with me. And then Mary, Mother Mary said, I want you to lie on the floor. I'm thinking, I can't lie on the floor. Everybody's in the chairs. And at that instant, the facilitator said, okay, everyone to the floor. So I'm lying on my back. My head is in Mary's lap, and Mary Magdalene is hovering above me. And she enters my body. And she healed me of my childhood molestations. And she came out of me. And then Mary said, we have to go now. And they both left. And I'm thinking, gee, they didn't even say goodbye. And when I said that, Mary Magdalene sticks her head around the corner and she takes my face in her hands and she just pecks me on the lips. Just a kiss, not a romantic kiss, just a kiss. And she said, you silly boy. And she was gone. And so that's how I first knowingly met Mary Magdalene. And then it was 2012 when she started coming to me with the Love Notes for Your Soul. So since December 13, 2012, every morning, I've been transcribing these love notes. So I have thousands of them. And I write them on a yellow pad. I write them in longhand on the yellow pad.
I was going to say the number of them has to be freaking huge. Like, if she's coming to you every morning since 2012, that's got to be a lot. And I mean a lot of different.
Yeah, I write them in longhand in this yellow pad. I get 6 on a page, and there's 50 pages. So each pad is 300 poems. And I got stacks of them.
I would imagine. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so, but again, I still, like I said, I still get doubts. Well, it's not me who's getting the doubts. It's my monkey mind, my ego,
Yeah,
but
makes sense.
The doubts periodically come through. And when they do, she tells me to do something that, stop doubting.
Well, before we do continue, hello, Harley. Hello, Nicole. Thank you guys for watching as always. Glad to have you back. And I'm sure you all been moved by this amazing story because I know I have. And honestly, I'm trying to think of where to even begin. And I have so many questions. But I guess the question I'll start off with is these poems from Mary Magdalene. Oh, well, I kind of want to know, what did Angelina think when she read them?
Well, her message back to me was, that's when I told her the backstory. They're called Love Notes from Maggie. They're from Mary Magdalene, who I call Maggie. And so she wrote back and said, Joseph, I love these love notes, but I have to tell you this. I mean, I have it memorized. I have to tell you this. Everybody knows me as Angelina. And then she told me the story I told you earlier. And she wrote a testimonial for me, but she gave me she was a model, so she gave me access to her entire portfolio, and she said, you can use any of my pictures you want, use my testimonial, And in fact, her picture's on the back of The Power of Angels. That's Angelina right there.
Mm.
Not that one, that one.
Oh, I was gonna say the puppy's cute, all right. Like, I love me a husky, but I mean, it's amazing, and I mean, why do you think she decided to show herself to you? Like, I'm sure that's something you thought
Yeah,
about
that
over the last decade.
right. Well, I never really thought about it, and then I was on an interview a couple of years ago. Just out of the blue, the guy said, "Well, why you? Why did she pick you?" And no one had asked me that before, and I didn't think about it. Just the answer that came through was, "Well, it's not about being chosen; it's about being receptive." So I just did a 5-week book tour in Mexico, and I met this lady. Uh, and I told her, I said, if you're receptive, Mary Magdalene will talk to you. And she actually began receiving messages from Mary Magdalene while I was there, while I was in Mexico. So it's not about being chosen, it's about being receptive. Now, when I was 7 years old, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know Mary from Mary Magdalene at that age. Uh, but this is an important point for your listeners. Your angels will give you experiences. So later, when you're doubting, they can have something to refer you back to. And that's why Maggie said, look up Carlos Castaneda. And it winds up that Magdalena was the town, the suburb of Nogales, Mexico. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that we humans are going to have doubts.
Always.
And so they'll create these stories for us. So later on, when you are having those doubts, they can, use these previous stories to make it a point that, just stop doubting. And again, remember, it's not us who are doubting, it's our egos, it's our monkey minds.
Yep, I love that. I love that phrase, monkey minds. I really do. But I do love that.
Well,
And go ahead.
if you think about it, you wake up in the morning, right? And your monkey mind starts chattering right away, right? Oh, you're thinking about what happened yesterday, or you're thinking about what happened 20 years ago, or you're thinking about what you're going to do later today, right? And so that's why I walk every day. I walk every day and I do affirmations every day. And you don't do the affirmations. The reason you do the affirmations is so your monkey mind doesn't take over your day. Right?
Makes
I mean,
sense.
if you want something, the thing with Mary Magdalene is she's strictly spiritual. There's no religious dogma or doctrine related with her love notes. It's strictly
Mm.
spiritual. And you can, because there's no dogma and doctrine, you're free to ask God whatever you want. Now, I do refer to scripture, but when I refer to scripture, it's not the dogma or the doctrine. It's maybe something that someone says. But everything in nature is simple, Jeremy. Everything in nature is simple. Nature is not complicated. And there's some simple scripture. And simple scripture says, you have not because you ask not. right?
Makes
Now,
sense.
right? So one of my affirmations is, everything in nature is simple. And simple scripture says, I have not because I ask not. It doesn't say I have not because of my PTSD. It doesn't say I have not because I was molested as a child. It doesn't say I have not because someone once told me I have a sabotaging subconscious mind, right? And I was young and naive and I believed them. No, it simply says you have not because you ask not. So what's that mean? That means to simply ask. So you don't have to write it down 100 times every day. You don't have to, say it 1,000 times every day. You just write it down one time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And once you write it down one time, God, the universe, whatever you want to name it, is on it. Now, but the doubts are going to start coming in, right? Oh, maybe I asked for too much. Or maybe, I shouldn't have asked for that. Or maybe I'm not worthy of that. So that's why you do the affirmations, right? You do the affirmations to keep your monkey mind at bay, right?
Of
So
course.
God knows what you asked for. Now you do the affirmations for you, not for God. God heard you the first time when you wrote it down.
Yep.
God has it, right? He's on it. She's on it, right? But you do the affirmations for you, right? Otherwise, from the time you get up to the time you go to bed, your monkey mind is controlling your day,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
It makes.
Right?
I mean,
So that's why
yeah.
you
I
do the
mean,
affirmations.
it's along the same line as manifestation. You have to manifest what you want to happen. You can't just expect the universe to hand you everything you want without telling it like at least something you want.
Right.
The universe isn't going to read your mind because they don't got time for that.
Right.
But
So that's why you
it's
write it down. You just write it down. I have a God box. I call it the God box. Um, if I have a problem with a neighbor, for example, I write their name down, put it in the God box. I'm done with it. If I don't do that, my monkey mind is creating all kinds of scenarios, right?
hmm
You know.
Oh,
So
trust me, I 100% get that.
whatever, yeah, whatever I run, I write it down, put it in the God box, and then I do my affirmations. You know, everything in nature is simple. Simple scripture says, I have not because I ask not. It does not say I have not because of my PTSD. It
Yep.
doesn't say that. It does not say I have not because I was molested. It doesn't say that. It just says I have not because I ask not. Okay, I'm asking. Put it in the God box. Okay. But I do that affirmation. I do several affirmations, but I do that affirmations while I'm walking, right? To keep my ego, to keep my monkey mind at bay. And as I do those affirmations over and over and over while I walk, then that sets up my day for me instead of my monkey mind setting up my day for me.
So, guess the next thing I'm kind of wondering is, out of all these thousands of love poems you wrote for Mary Magdalene, what's the general message you get out of them? Like, is there like an overall message, or is it vary daily?
The overall message is only love is real. And there is no dogma, there's no doctrine in her poetry. Only love is real. And so you love yourself, right? If you love yourself, you get up, you exercise, you'll do your affirmations, right? Um, like this morning at 2:23, she wrote about compassion. She said, "My love, kindness sprinkled with compassion, imbued with our love meaning the other angels, need not be rationed, but given away freely, and freely given, so you shall be set free. See, people the monkey mind catches people, right? People say, well, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my life mission is. Well, because you're listening to your monkey mind every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Maggie, I call her Magdalena Maggie. Maggie says that whoever is attracted to her love notes can consider her their guardian angel. If you're not attracted to her love notes, then that's okay, But there's plenty of angels to go around, But you have to be receptive to them.
It's funny. I actually just found out last night that my guardian spirit's name is Anthony. No idea what that means, who they are, but I just found out last night their name for the first time after 2 years doing this podcast. Someone finally picked up on it. They're like, "Do you know Anthony?" I'm like, not in the last 20 years. I haven't. So, no. She's like, must be your guardian spirit then. I mean, it has to be. There's nothing if you don't know a person named Anthony. That's one person I could think. That's one I think it could be. And I'm like, interesting. I'm going to start trying to communicate slightly, but.
Well, and Rumi, the Persian poet Rumi, has a famous quote. He says, "The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep." So people ask me, well, how can I receive messages from my angels? I said, well, when you wake up at 2 a.m, get up and listen for the morning breeze. It has secrets to tell you. And that's how this started. I just woke up one morning and I didn't know who, what, but something told me to sit at my desk with this yellow pad and a pen. And that's when they started coming through. And now I get about 6, sometimes 12 a morning. But in the beginning, Jeremy, I do 3 hours nonstop. I'd get 65, 85, 11 of those nonstop, But I was receptive. I didn't go back to sleep. So if you want to be receptive, then when you do wake up in those early morning hours, get up, sit down at your desk with a pen and paper, and just wait. Just wait. There's a reason you woke up. There's a reason you woke up at 2 a.m. It wasn't to go back to sleep.
Well, I mean, in my case, if I wake up at 2 a.m, it's usually because my pregnant wife has to go to the bathroom. But
right.
I mean, there's a reason behind it. But I mean, there are those times you wake up like at 3, 4 in the morning and you don't know why, and you're like, why am I awake and why am I having a hard time falling back asleep? And
you're right. So you get up, sit at your desk with a pen and paper, and wait for the answer.
Interesting.
Just wait for it.
And
the morning breeze has secrets to tell you. To not go back to sleep.
And do you not go back to sleep at all after that, or do you just like start your day after
no,
you get on the message?
So I get up like at 2, and I'll transcribe till maybe 3, and then I'll go back to bed, and then I get up around 6. And then I go for my walk, do my affirmations. And then sometime during the day, I'll take a nap.
All right, I was going to say, because I'm like, you got to be one tired person if you've been doing that for 12 years. I mean, you got to be a tired person at that point.
I always take a nap. I always take a nap, yeah.
All right, I mean, sleep's important. But let me ask you this, because I don't know if you've ever been asked this before, but a lot of people like to say that angels may be extraterrestrial in nature. What's your opinion on that?
Well, my experience. Uh, Now, I only have experience with Mary and Mary Magdalene, and for a very short period, Christ, but mainly Mary, Mary Magdalene. And they're not extraterrestrial. Now, there could be angels that are extraterrestrial. I don't know, but I've never focused on that. You know, I've just been focused on Mary and Maggie.
But
But whoever
did
asks
you?
you the question, if you want to know the answer to the question, you've already asked it. So next time you wake up in the early morning, get up and sit at your desk and wait for the answer.
Might have to. Might have to.
Yeah.
But did you say you talked to Christ for a while?
Now I didn't talk to Christ. That workshop where I told you Mother Mary was beaming me with golden white light, and then I went into that rapture. Well, I didn't. It didn't happen that night. It was 2 nights later that I had this out of body experience, and I was sitting on the floor, and they were playing some drumming music, and my head was tapping the wall, keeping time with the drumming. And well, okay, let me back up. A few years earlier, I had this experience with the white light. Okay, so at that time, if you recall back then, 1980s, 1990s, the white light was the big thing, right? I mean, that was the ultimate spiritual experience, and I spent a week in the white light back then. So here I was at this workshop, and my spirit's trying to leave my body, right? And it's hitting the crown of my head and falling back, hitting the crown of my head, falling back. And then finally, it shot through the crown of my head and just went with the speed of light. And I remember looking down, and that trap door, I called it, that I was trying to get through was the white light. And I went into these light regions that the Catholic called rapture. But with me while I was traveling, you know, it felt like the speed of light. I don't know, but you know, I was traveling. Christ was my guide, and we went and went and went, and we came. We saw this light in the far distance, and Christ stopped me and he said, "You can't go there." I said, "No, I want to go." He said, "No, if you go there, you'll combust. You're not ready for that light." So I came back into my body. Well, years later, I found out that was the light of Mary Magdalene. So your angels will come in different forms, right? So when I was 7, she came to me through this feeling of grace. At that workshop, she was this light in the distance. And then in the other workshop at the mission, she actually came to me in semi-physical form. So your angels will come different ways. It just depends on how receptive you are at the time that they come.
Makes sense. I mean, it really does make sense. And I got to ask though, if do you think that because I mean, yin and yang exists everywhere in the world, good and bad. So if there are angels, are there actually demons?
Well, I've been asked that before, especially in Mexico,
Hmm.
because they believe in the witch. They believe in the witches in Mexico,
Oh yeah.
and my answer then and my answer now is only love is real. Love, light, only love is real. And I told this woman in Mexico, I said, you know, you have witches in Mexico because you believe in witches. And this was right after, this was like a month after the Massachusetts Assembly pardoned or apologized for burning the witches in Salem in 1692, right? And I said, we don't believe, we don't have witches in the United States because we don't believe in them. And her answer to me was, now this is an educated person, a college graduate. Her answer to me was, of course you believe in witches in the United States. You celebrate Halloween. And after I picked my jaw up off the floor, I said, no, Halloween is for children, and well, for some adults too, who dress up and they have fun. It doesn't mean we believe in witches, So,
Well, I mean,
yeah, if you want to believe
witches.
in demons, if you want to believe in bad spirits, evil spirits, then they exist.
I
But
mean,
they
there is a
don't
lot.
they don't
There's a lot.
exist for me.
There's a
What's
lot of
that?
power behind thought. There's a lot of power behind thought. That's
Yes,
100% true. And I mean,
yes.
but as someone who's
Maggie,
actually,
Maggie, Maggie never discusses anything like that.
hmm,
It's just
I
not in
mean,
her. It's just not in her realm.
I
All
mean,
she's
I,
focused on.
as someone who's interviewed witches on this show, I mean, they've all been light witches. I never interviewed a dark witch by any means, but
Well, yes. Well, like I said, if you believe in witches, witches exist. Maggie doesn't go there. She doesn't go. She doesn't touch on any of that stuff. All she's focused on is only love is real, unconditional love.
which makes, I mean, unconditional love is a great thing. It really is. But I mean, there are people. I mean, are you supposed to love someone who has wronged you so much that you can't possibly give them another ounce of love? Like,
Now, that's what Christ did.
mm,
That's what Christ did.
eh,
That's what Mary Magdalene does.
I
Can I
mean,
do it? No, not 100%.
okay, yeah.
But
I was gonna say, I'm like,
that's because I'm not Mary Magdalene. I'm not Christ. You know, we're here. We're here on this earth plane to learn certain lessons, right?
exactly. I mean, there have been people that have wronged me so wrong in my life recently and years ago that I never could see myself forgiving them, let alone loving them. It's
Mm-hmm.
just they, if there is a
Well, you
hell,
don't.
they deserve to be there.
Mother Teresa said. Somebody asked her one time. Says, "How do you do this? How do you go out every day and nurse these people?" Because she was nursing untouchables, you know, and she said, "Well, I, I she said, I don't see individual people. Every time I pick a person up, I see the Christ." So you don't have to love the action, but the soul. There's no reason not to love the soul. Now, somebody does something that hurts you or hurts someone else, or um, a school shooting, something like that. Yeah, you can't condone the action, but the soul is the soul.
Makes sense in a way.
It's hard. I mean,
I mean,
it's easy for me
it.
to sit here and say that my child hasn't been killed in a school shooting, right? What would I do if that happened? Well, I don't know what I would do, but I know what the principle is, but again, we're human beings having a spiritual experience. You know, we're not perfect, and and it wasn't easy for Christ, to forgive some people. So if it wasn't
Oh,
easy for him, it's not going to be easy for us, you know.
and we're
But
we're nowhere near Christ.
just having the consciousness, Jeremy, that okay, I don't like the action, but I love the soul. Just having that awareness, wow, your soul, I don't want to say advanced, but your soul, uh, more aware than most people on earth. Just having that
Yeah,
awareness, whether you can do it or not yet is one thing, but just having the awareness, that's the starting point, you know.
I can imagine. I mean, it's as a human, it's hard to be Christ-like. It's hard to forgive,
Right,
and it's
right.
hard to move. It's hard to move on, of course. And I mean,
And
we're
I
only
don't think
human.
we're supposed to be Christ-like. I mean, that's something to strive for, but, you know, if you were Christ-like, you wouldn't be here anymore. You'd be gone, you know.
Well,
But
unless we
because we're still here, we got a lot to learn.
unless we have a purpose. I mean, if we have a purpose, then we might still be here and be Christ-like. Some of us,
Right.
who knows? But it's once again, it's all fate. It's all synchronicity. We're all meant to do certain things. Things happen for a reason, and signs are there that are always similar to tell us we're doing the right thing. So, I. But why don't you tell us? Why don't you tell us about your podcast for a minute before we end this off? Because I'm kind of curious to what the Overthinkers podcast is.
Oh, it's just only love, and it's just I just take samples of Maggie's love notes, and I'll pick one and I'll read it, and then I'll discuss it. So that's
Oh, okay,
basically, yeah.
nice. Oh, okay.
It's called daily. It's called daily love,
Oh,
and
okay. Well,
I
apparently
don't do
there's
it every day. I don't do it every day. I was in Mexico for 5 weeks on a book tour. I couldn't do it then. Um, but yeah, we had an interesting experience in Mexico. Did some healings,
really.
through Maggie. Yeah, one lady, she had breast cancer. She's 35 years old, and we were in Villahermosa, and she's in Merida. So we went down. We flew down to Merida, and uh, my host, because I don't speak Spanish fluently. So we went, and um, her and her husband and her mother and my host and me were had a meeting that night, and um, this never ever happened to me. But I have this crucifix.
Yep.
Well, I give you a quick story behind the crucifix. In 1986, I met a man. I was going to church at that time, Self-Realization Church in San Diego. And I met this man who was 90 years old, and he was a reverend, and his name was John Lawrence. And, we would talk after church every Sunday. And then one Sunday, he invited me over to his home, to his apartment, and he read auras. And I said, well, I thought I'd like to get to know him a little bit more, and I never had my aura read. So the following Saturday, I drove over, and he had to go down a flight of stairs to get to his apartment. And we sat down and with a coffee table between us, so we were facing each other. He said, okay, let's meditate a little bit and I'll read your aura. Okay. So, I'm sitting there with my eyes closed and he's reading my aura. And I'm thinking, this is a bunch of malarkey. I mean, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking, I was not impressed at all. Yeah, but I was, being polite and, just meditating and listening. And then he, his foot kicked the leg of the coffee table. And, he was 90 years old. So I thought, well, I better check, make sure he's okay. So I just opened my eyes just a little bit, and he was like this, Jeremy. And I said, well, I'm thinking he's okay. So I closed my eyes. And so afterwards, it's time to leave. And he said, well, I have something for you. So he goes into his room and he comes back and he hands me this crucifix. And he says, I saw this hovering above your head. Well, I didn't know what to think of it, but it was a very nice gesture. And so I took it and I keep it with me ever since 1986. And so I went out, said goodbye. I went up the stairs. I got into my car and I got in and I closed the door. You know how you close your door when you get in your car? That's how I closed it. Just boom. But when I closed it, there's a bam. And the whole vehicle was encased in the bubble white light. We hadn't talked about white light or anything. That wasn't even on my mind. And I cannot tell you how I got home. But when I got home, my wife had lunch ready for me. I sat down at the table. I picked up food and I brought it, and I can only get it about 12 inches to my mouth. I had this bubble, and she saw it. I had this bubble of white light around me. The vibration of the bubble was so fine compared to the vibration of the food. The food cannot penetrate the bubble. So I didn't eat for 1 week. And it gradually dissipated after that 1 week. Well, that was the bubble of white light. And so when we were in Merida, I've kept this with me. Whenever I go out, it's always with me since 1986. And her name was Danny with the breast cancer. And I said, Danny, I've never done this before, but I'm going to let you borrow this crucifix. And you can give it to me when we return to Villahermosa. So I gave it to her. I've never done that. This has never left my being. But Maggie told me to give it to her. And so she kept it for 4 days. And we would meet each day and do a healing. I say a healing, it's not us, it's Maggie working through.
Of course.
And so she went to have the surgery. And the surgeon opened up her breast.
Mm-hmm.
And his words were, why is this lady scheduled for surgery? There's no cancer here. And now it's interesting. because I got a love note a couple of weeks ago about that. Well, my host is Jewish, and so when they they let us stay in this vacant home that they had. It's a rental home, and they had statues, the Virgin Mary, you know. Well, my host went around and collected all the statues and put them and hid them behind a dresser drawer. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm Jewish. We don't believe in uh, idols, whatever it is." I said, "Okay, so, all right." So a few weeks ago, Maggie wrote me a love note. She said, "Well, when she did that, I knew I had to do something extraordinary. And that's why I told you to give Danny the crucifix." So, you can have a lot of fun with this too. I'm not denigrating her Jewishness or anything. It's just, that's just what happened. That's all. So,
I mean, well, I for one think Christ wouldn't mind making a few jokes at the Jewish people's expense after what they did. But I mean, at least to me. But that's a amazing story. I mean, healings are always amazing, and there's plenty of proof of them in the world of religion alone. There's plenty of proof for healings, and it's it's miraculous when it happens. It really is, and who knows why these things actually happen? Like, is it? I can't even begin to
yeah.
speculate. I can't begin to speculate. It's just the way it goes.
Well, it's interesting, and this is where affirmations come in. Um, um, I put the book out. It's Angels, Angels Everywhere. It's my latest book. And I met this lady online in Mexico who translated it for me. And she invited me to Villahermosa. And I live out in the country here. I have a 5-acre homestead, and across the road is the Self-Realization Fellowship ashram. So I'm pretty isolated, and I'm on a country road, very little traffic. I go into town. I try not to go into town. So I live a pretty quiet life out here. And anyway, she said, "Why don't you come to Mexico?" I said, "Mexico? Oh, man, you want me to get on an airplane?" And we were joking about it. But Maggie said, "Yeah, you need to go." So I went and spent 5 weeks going to different cities doing a book tour. And that's where we met Danny. And just met a lot of nice people.
I'm sure. I mean,
They do believe in witches. And but I think because of that, they're very open to, they're open to, this idea of angels and Mary Magdalene. And it's interesting that the main core people were Jewish, and I didn't realize, they just elected the Jewish president. I didn't realize that, I thought it was strictly Catholic in Mexico, but no, a lot of them
same.
Jewish people. So
I would have assumed the same. So I don't blame
yeah,
you.
yeah. But so things like that, and um, the surgeon opened her up and said, "Why was she scheduled for surgery?" closed her back up.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well,
And I saw that. I mean, that wasn't a story somebody told me. I witnessed that.
oh yeah, yeah, and that's miraculous. It really is. It's amazing, and I only can hope that one day I'll witness something along those same lines to make me somewhat a believer again. I mean, as the listeners of my show know, I have a kind of a stigma against organized religion because they have done a lot of bad in history and still do to this day certain religions. But it's just, I don't know. It's just in a politics show, so I try not to get into it too much.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming on, Joseph. It's been amazing to hear your tale. I truly am a changed person because of it to some degree, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, and if they're interested in the book with Maggie on the back, you just go to Amazon, put Joseph, Loving Yourself Wealthy, The Power of Angels, and it comes right up. Or they can go, if they want to speak to me for any reason, my email is jmlove, J for Joseph, MM for Mary Magdalene, love, her message, jmlove at jsdailywisdom.com. So jsdailywisdom.com. And we can communicate through there.
Well, there you go, folks. And of course, those links will be right in the description as well for all my listeners, as always. And as far as where you can find me, sorry, go ahead.
Any questions? Do you take questions on your podcast? Or?
I do. Just besides a few comments I put on the stage, they've been quiet tonight. Sometimes they have questions. A lot of times they don't. It's just the ones that watch. The ones that watch are just here to observe. Usually, you can ask more. And Twitter.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you for doing what you do.
Of course, Twitter's weird. I mean, Twitter. You can comment on Twitter, but I don't think people realize it yet since they changed it. So, and a lot of my watchers are from Twitter. So, but well, folks, you know where you can find me. If you don't by now, shame. But check the outro; it'll tell you where you'll find me. And for all my watchers, it's on the bottom of the screen. Just freaking read. But thank you, Joseph, for coming on, and I will see you. I will see you all next week with some more great interviews. And until then, have a good night, everybody.